Hello and welcome back to my channel. In this video, we'll be reviewing tips for the removal and replacement of the evap purge valve on this 2019 Honda CRV with the 1.5 liter engine. If you find my tips to be helpful, please like, subscribe, and comment. Now let's get started. The evap purge valve is located in the center of your screen near the tip of my red pointer. Some of the symptoms associated with a faulty valve include rough idle, difficult starting, low fuel economy, fuel smell, increased emissions, engine stall, and a check engine light with trouble codes P1441, P1455 Charlie, P1454, P1456, P1457, and P1459. So you might ask, what does this part do? Well, it controls the flow of fuel vapor from the vapor canister to the intake manifold. Now let's move forward with our supply list. Our supply list includes a vapor canister purge solenoid if needed, a pair of pliers, a 10mm socket with an extension and a ratchet. You'll need a flat tip screwdriver and some penetrating oil for the hose connections if they're really hard to get off. So let's move forward with the removal and replacement of the evap purge valve. As noted in the picture, the access to the valve is blocked by one of the intake components. So the first thing we'll need to do is remove that large housing, set it off to the side, and then that will provide much better access to the solenoid. So I'll complete that step first. So the first thing I did was I loosened up these two clamps right here. 1, 2. I also used a flat tip screwdriver to loosen up and go underneath these edges right here, kind of break them free. Secondly, I used my 10mm socket right here and right here to loosen up those bolts. Set them off to the side. And then I just carefully pulled it towards me and then pushed out towards the windshield. Just like that. There you go. So I'm going to point out some connections that must be removed. So there is the electrical connector right here. There is a hose connection right there, a hose connection right there, and a hose connection down here. Okay? And then the order that I'm going to remove them is electrical connector, hose connection, and then I'm going to work on that connection down there. And I'll let you know, I put a little bit of penetrating oil at each location, and I used a pair of pliers to kind of work the rubber hose back and forth, back and forth. It took me a few minutes to kind of work these connections back and forth so that the oil would get in there and then I could pull the hose off. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. After I do that, I'm going to remove that bolt right here. It's a 10mm bolt, and I'm going to remove this 10mm bolt right here. Then we'll inspect the solenoid, okay? Use my pliers to squeeze the hose clamp near the front of the vehicle. Pull it off. Pliers to loosen up the hose clamp near the rear of the vehicle. Pull that hose connection off. Loosen up the electrical connector. Set that off to the side. Loosening up the bolts. You know, I'm kind of out of order of what I stated in the video, but you guys get the gist of what I'm doing. Okay, and now I need to work on the holes on the bottom. And so it's kind of difficult to get to. And so I use these pliers right here, okay, to get in here. That with a little bit of penetrating oil. And I just move the valve off to the side a little bit, and I just work that hose connection back and forth. It took me several minutes. And then I slowly, it came loose and I slid it off. And there you have it. That's your evap purge valve. And so let's just go ahead and do an inspection from top to bottom. This was not throwing a code. You can see that the electrical connectors are nice and straight. I don't see any cracks here. If I were to blow on this right now, on either one of these ends, there should not be any flow. If there's open flow, that means this valve is no good and it should be tossed out. Okay, so I just want to say there's two types of tests you can test these valves for. That's the large leak test and then the small leak test. What I just performed was a large leak test. I applied a high volume of pressure right here for about 2 seconds. Nothing came out, okay? The small leak test, what you would have to do is apply a pressurized system right here, like a clear tube with a little pump with a gauge, and then let that sit on there for 2 or 3 minutes and watch the gauge. And if the gauge pressure falls, it tells you that it has a small leak and that the valve should be replaced. But if it holds pressure for about 5 or 6 minutes, this valve is perfectly fine and can be put back into use. That's really all I wanted to cover on this video. So let's go ahead with the reinstallation of this valve. Okay, so I'm going to try to do this in reverse order, starting with this hose connection right here. To make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to slide that hose clamp very close to its permanent position. Okay. Using my needle nose pliers, pushing the hose all the way up. There you go. Now those hose clamp should be within about 1/4 inch away from the end of the rubber hose. This honestly is the hardest part. You could use your flat tip screwdriver to help to get the hose clamp into place. Okay, that looks great. Next thing I'm going to do is recheck the connection at the bottom to make sure that that did not come loose during installation. Next thing I'm going to do is connect the hose closest to the firewall. So I'm going to go under this little bracket right here. Slide it on. Once again, I'm going to come in with my pointed pliers. Get that clamp in place. There you go. Now I'm going to work on the hose that's located near the front of the vehicle. Slide the hose on. Use my pliers, just like that. Okay, give everything a good wiggle. Make sure it's not binding or twisting. Should be in a natural position. Okay, install the bolts. One bolt there, one bolt near the rear. Okay. And these bolts just need to be snug. Maybe 5 pound-feet of pressure. Okay, and lastly, we have the electrical connector. We're going to take a look at the gasket. Make sure we're orienting the wires in the correct position so that we're not twisting the wires up. Slide it on, listen for the click. There you go, and it locked. Well folks, there you have it. We've just completed the removal and replacement of the evap purge valve on this 2019 Honda CRV with the 1.5 liter engine. If you found my tips to be helpful, please like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, drive defensively.